Hello guys, in this video we'll be setting up authorization and authentication for our application. Authorization and authentication is just a way we set up our application to recognize the users of the application. It's very important. If you have a GitHub account, you probably logged in to your account. Before you logged in, you signed up. So you signed up for to have a GitHub account. So this is just basic authorization. So signing up the on GitHub, GitHub authorizes you to have an account, and then when you sign in, you're authenticated. So we're going to be demonstrating that with our application. So we're building authentication in our API. Before we get started, I failed to push again, so I will just be quickly doing that. I'll just be quickly doing that before we get started with authentication. So let's push this to GitHub. So we're adding everything and we'll commit. So commit with git commit m. Say server set server and database setup. And we push git push origin dev. Alright, so currently we've pushed to GitHub now. It's been pushed, so let's get started with authorization and authentication for our app. This might be a slightly long video because we have about 3 users like I previously stated, so we'll be authorizing all 3 of them in this particular video. So you might want to buckle up a bit, and if you don't have data to watch this, maybe get some more data. Alright, so we're going to get started by creating a couple of folders. The very first folder we'll be creating is the routes folder. So folder, so routes. The next one will be our models. And next is controllers. So we've done that right now. Let's get started by creating some routes. So going back to our description or our project description, now the idea behind my breakdown of the task was that let's say you were trying to log in, or you're trying to log in into your Facebook account. You probably don't know this, but Facebook has different kinds of users. So you have maybe the normal user, and then you have the admin user. So the admin user views all activities that goes on Facebook, on the Facebook app. And you probably have other users, maybe like the business users. So these users are the ones that log in to Facebook as business owners or something, and so on and so forth. So, but they all use one route. They all use this route to log into their accounts. So that shows you that that was the idea behind how I broke down this task. So for login, we'll be having only one route for login, and then but you'll be able to sign up as different other users. So you'll be able to sign up as a tutor. You can't sign up as an admin, because admin user is not something that is not an access that should be given to anybody for security purposes. But a user can decide to sign up as a tutor, and a user can decide to sign up as a student. So depending on how these users decide to sign up, they will be given different access control. So there's something in programming that we call access control. Access control is just defining different privileges to different users. So as a tutor, you'll be able to do certain things that a student will not be able to do. As a student, you'll probably be able to do certain things that a tutor can do, but you can also do as a student. So that is what access control is. So we'll be setting that up right now. Okay, so first things first, to create our routes, we're going to be creating a route called user. So user.js, and in user.js we're going to bring in express. So const express equals require express. So express has something called router. So we'll be bringing that into router equals express dot router. Okay, let's leave that for now. We'll be bringing in other things later, but for now let's just leave this. Next thing, we would want to import the router controller. So this has not been created yet, but follow me, you'll catch up. So we're going to call it users controller. And we're going to require this file from controllers. So it hasn't been created yet. Users controller. Cool. So next is we have to create the routes now. So we'll create the routes. So login routes, login user routes. So we're creating that with router dot is going to be a post. Okay, save that for now. Is my server on? Okay, I'm connected right now. Okay, so yeah, so post takes in the URI or the URL. So a very common convention is to call your URL like this. So /API/ and then we would say auth. So auth login. This is a common convention, and the next parameter would be the controller. So users controller, and for this particular route, the controller that is the function that's going to controlling this route is, we'll call it log in user. All right, so let's create the controller right now. So like I said, the controller is going to be called users controller. You might be wondering what controllers are. Controller is just a file where you write every business logic pertaining to your app. So whatever the app is meant to do, it's probably going to have a controller for that. So it's controller. The MVC convention is a convention that is used in a lot of programming languages, be it Node, be it C Sharp, be it Python. Probably have controllers there too in Django. So MVC, so M stands for models, D stands for views, D stands for controllers. So it's just a programming convention for APIs. Alright, so let's continue by creating our controller. So in this controller, this particular controller, we'll be calling it users controller .js. Alright, so that has been connected. The first thing we would want to do is to bring in our model. So const user model, we call it user with capital U equals require from models. It's going to be called users or user. So that hasn't been created yet, but stay with me, we'll be creating that soon. So let's create our login routes. So how do we do that? We do it with exports. So we're going to be exporting this function because it's a function that we're already using here. So we'll be exporting this exports dot user dot login user. So it's going to be an async function. Async, and this is going to take in requests and response. All right, so we probably want to import some modules that we'll be using to create these routes. But before we do that, there's something I always like doing personally for documentation purposes. So I like doing this. I like commenting my code. Like I told you in the previous class, commenting of code is cannot be understated. So it's very, very important to comment your code. So anybody that reads your code will know what your code is trying to do. This is how I comment my routes. So I say route. This is going to be a post. It's going to be a post route, and it's going to be the URI is going to be API/auth/login. That's for routes. Another thing I'd like to add is the description. The description is going to authenticate the user, be it student, be it tutor, or be it admin, and get token. Then access. This route, what is it going to be? How is it going to be accessed? Is it going to be a private? Is it going to be a private route, or is it going to be public? This is going to be a public route. You'll get to understand what this means later. So yeah, we want to bring in a module known as Express Validator. And Express Validator, like I mentioned in the previous class, we use it to validate wherever it is that I'm wondering why I'm getting some error here. Okay, so it's because of these cons that I have here, that's why. So yeah, so moving on. We're going to be bringing in Express Validator, and like I said in the previous class, Express Validator is a module that we use to validate the request. So the request that's coming in from your client will be validated. So you will see what that's going to do. So we'll be bringing in a function known as validation results from Express module. So we'll require Express Validator. Yeah, so another module we'll be needing for this particular controller will be the JWT. I'll be explaining that when we get to use it. So require JSON Web Token. So JSON Web Token. Another one we need is bcrypt. And by the way, I can require all these modules because I previously installed them with npm. So in the previous class, I did npm install bcrypt, npm install JWT, npm install Express Validator. That's why I can require all these particular modules right now. So if you've not installed them, you should probably check out that video and install it for yourself. So for this, I'll be bringing in bcrypt, so bcrypt.js. Hope I spelled that right. If I didn't, I shouldn't get. Yeah, so I did. I think that should be it for now. Okay, so let's do let's go back to our routes. Okay, so I remember that we've not created our user model. Let's quickly create that now. So for our user model, we'll be creating a file called user.js. So model is just like a basic representation of what your database is going to be. And in modern programming languages, we use something known as schemas. So schemas they kind of model your database and map it to whatever controller it is that you would like that database to be used in. So this is something a very popular convention that we use in programming. So instead of writing SQL queries to create your database, models does that for us automatically. So when we run our server, the database is created from that model. So how for this particular model, or for this project, like I mentioned in the previous class, I mentioned that we'll be using a package known as Mongoose. So let's bring in Mongoose. Require Mongoose, and we can use const. We can create our schema. Let me comment that, create user schema. So say const user schema equals mongoose dot schema. Now in here we can create our schema now, our schema objects. So we're just going to define some properties. So the very first property we'll be creating is the first name. So first name. So first name is going to have a type of string, and it's also going to be required. So you can't do anything without you can't sign up without this first name. So it's going to be true. The next one is the last name. So type of string, required true. Next one is the email. And I have an idea of what I'm doing because I have previously created or mapped out what I was going to do. So you can see it from here. Okay, so I didn't need to add email previously, so it's going to be email, it's going to be password, it's going to be role, is tutor, it's going to be is admin, it's going to be a boolean, and then created at and updated at. Yeah, so I've previously mapped out what my user model was going to look like, so that's why I can do this right now. So in case you're working on a particular project, this is one of the very first things you are going to do before you even start out coding. Yeah, so email is going to have a type of string. So email is going to be a string, and it's going to be required also. Sure. It's going to be a unique key. So emails are unique. They are part of so every no two person can have the same email. That's what that means. It's going to be unique. Another thing that is usually unique in the database is the ID. Or more on that later. So password be a type of string. Leave that like that for now. And then we'll create a user role. So this user role key is what we're going to be using to assign different privileges to our users. So for the user role, we're going to say type of string. It's going to be a type of string, and Mongoose has a key known as enum. So enum. So we're going to use this to enumerate the different user roles that we want for this particular schema. So user can be an admin, it can be a tutor, it can be a student, and lastly we're just going to say not assigned, because not assigned, so that's to represent that no user role has been assigned to the user. So next thing to do is to say defaults. So default, I'm just going to say for this particular user, default to be not assigned. Yeah, so that's for user role. The next thing to do now is the tutor. Yes, tutor. We say type. Tutor is going to be a boolean. It's going to have a default of false, so represent false with 0. Next thing to do is admin. So we need to know if a particular user is either is a tutor or is an admin. So it's admin, we'll say type going to be a boolean, and it's going to have a default of false. Say a student cannot be a tutor and a student cannot be an admin. Only an admin can have a property of his admin set to true. A tutor can either be a tutor, that is tutor true, and is admin. So a tutor can be a tutor and an admin at the same time, or he can also decide to be only a tutor. That's why we have these two properties represented here. Okay, so that's it for this particular schema, or this particular part. One thing, and I would also like to add, is we need timestamp. So this property set it to true. This property is going to allow MongoDB create the these particular properties here automatically for us. So created at and updated at is going to be created because we set timestamp to true, and it's going to have a type of date. So that's that for that. That's that about this. So next thing we would like to do is to export our schema, and we do that like this: mongoose dot model. So this is going to take a string called user, that's the name of the model, and then the user schema. Save this, and now we can use that in our controller if we like. So let's go back to our routes. Let's set up some things here in our routes. So we have the routes, we have the URI here. We also need some checks here too. So before we do that, let's set up a middleware that is going to, that we can use to authenticate okay, so let's just create a file called middleware. I'll come back to this later. So middleware, we'll get back to this later. Let's go back to our route here, user route. I said we need a check, we need a validation. So say const check. This is going to come from express, going to come from express validator. So express validator. And how do we use that in our routes? We use that here. So here we'll put in an array. In this array we can write some checks. I don't know why my ESLint is not working. It should be editing my code for me automatically, but that's by the side. So what do we want to do here? We want to write some checks. So we're going to be checking for the email. So email, we can write a message. So if the email is wrong, this is the message that's going to show. We're going to say please enter a valid email, and email express validator check gives us an object called is email, which automatically checks whether this input or this input value is an email. The next we're going to check for this login route will be the password. So the password takes in password parameter keyword, and then it's going to take in the message. We'll say, can just write a custom message here, say valid password required. We'll say exists. Save the file. Let me arrange this properly. Alright, so one thing I'd like to do here also is to export this route. So module.exports equals router. Close this for now, and we save the file. So back to our user controller. So the login user, would like to check if there are any errors. And how do we do that? So we can see check for errors. So you can say const errors equals validate results. Validate results is going to come from here. So validate results from express validator. And what are we validating? We're validating the request. And we'll say if errors is empty. So this means if there are errors, errors is empty, not. So this is a negative statement. So this means if there are errors. And by the way, if you're wondering how I know all these things, there's a documentation for Express Validator. So just Google Express Validator. Express Validator, get started. So here you can see how you can set up Express Validator for JavaScript or TypeScript. Right now we're using JavaScript. So we've done this already. We brought in validation results. You can see this has been done. And yeah, so if you are wondering how to do these things, you can just check the docs. The docs will direct you on what to do. So yeah, let's get back to the code. So we'll say if results is not empty. So I mean, if errors is not empty, if we have errors, return res.status. So the status code will be returning for this error is 400. So what is error 400? Google that. So it means bad requests. So if there are errors, of course, it means that we have a bad request. So that's the appropriate status code for this particular function. So status 400, and then we're returning a JSON object. Just return the errors to the user. So errors dot array. So if there are errors, validation results is going to throw in an error in form of an array, which we'll get to see later on in the video. So else, if there are no errors, first with the structure request body. So I taught you how to destructure in a previous class. This is how we destructure. We're going to bring in email and password from request.body. So like I said, if we did not destructure here, we would probably use this like this: request.body.email and request.body.password. So it's kind of hectic to do, so you can just destructure the the objects, and now we'll just be able to use this as email and password, which you'll get to see later. Alright, so the next thing to do, we're going to write a try catch. And in our try catch, we'll create a user object from our model. So we're going to initialize new user. So say let user equals await, because this is an async function, and we are dealing with the database right now, so we have to use await user dot. So MongoDB or Mongoose has an object known as find one. So we use user dot find one. So find one, you find a particular user that has whatever parameter we put in here. So we're going to say the parameter should be email, where email is email. So email coming from this email here is this request body here, and then this email is from your model here. So what I said there is that find one user where this email matches the email from the database. But with new JavaScript now, we don't need to write it this way. We can just say email because they both have the key and the property are both the same. Key and the value. So we can say if user is not found, return res.status of 400. So that's bad request. .json. So you can just type a message to the user or to the client. Just say invalid credentials. We also want to send the status code, so we can say status code 400 message invalid credentials. Else, let me break this down. It looks a bit long. Return result status dot status dot JSON status code 400 message. It's better this way. So else we can say check the password. Before we continue, let's go back to our middleware. In our middleware, we want to create a file called auth.js. So auth.js. So this particular middleware will just check to see if there's a token and header. Yeah, so what I mean by this is that so I've closed my Facebook page. So when a user tries to log in, what goes on behind the scene is that a token is sent. So that token is sent to the header, and the browser checks or the server checks if there is a token. So if the token usually they carry it's like a code, like a code, an encrypted code that carries details of a particular user. So if the token carries a detail of a particular user that is trying to log in, into the app, then the person is going to be authenticated, else the person is not going to be authenticated. So how do we do this? We use the module known as JSON Web Token to do this. So JSON Web Token equals require JSON Web Token. So const. Before I continue, let's go back to our browser. So right here is an example of what JSON, of what token is. So this is a valid token. So you can see what these codes represent. This red code represents the header. So these are what you have in the header. So this thing right here, these things right here is what is encrypted in this code, this part of JSON, in this part of the token. This particular part is the payload. So this is where you have the data coming from your from your requests. So your payload. So you can see the name of this person is John Doe, and different other payloads that don't really make sense right now, but you will see what it means in our code. So this is the payload, and this is a signature. So what this means is that your signature is, this one carries your password and everything. So when you try to sign in or log in, your bcrypt signs your, or JWT signs the password, and then it stores it in this particular part of the token. So you can see that this token, it might not really make sense, but they actually mean something. So I hope you understand what I was trying to explain there. So we're going to say module.export. We're just going to be exporting a function. This is going to be going to hold requests, response, and next. So we'll say first we're going to get token from header. Our token is usually in the header. So some would like to put token in the body. I really don't encourage that. It makes your API look ugly. So I don't know why I would be copying and putting token in the body. It's not advisable to do that. The ideal way to put in your token is through the header. So your client don't really have to deal with what token is or know what token is. Everything is just sent through the header. So we're going to const token, create a token variable, which is equal to requests dot header. So for this header is going to have a key called export token. Another really popular way or thing that the people use is authorization. So authorization. So you can say do that, or you can do X or token. So you'll get to see what this means later on when we're testing our application. So next, we're going to check if token doesn't exist. So how do we do that? We say if there is no token, just return res.status 401. So here we're using 401. What is 401? What is error 401? So unauthorized. So error 401 means unauthorized. So if there is no token, we're going to tell the user that you are not authorized. So this is the appropriate status code to use for this particular function. So JSON, then we're going to send a message. You just say status code unauthorized, and then a message. We're going to say no token, authentication denied, authorization denied. So let's break this down. This is looking a bit long. Let's say rest status. Let's break this down here. So we need status code here. We need message down here. Then we can break this down here. So fine. Else, what do we want to do? Else the token exists. So we can use our try catch here. So try catch, say const. So we're going to try to decode our token. So we decoded equals jwt dot verify. So verify will take in the token is coming from here. We're going to take in this token, and it's going to take in a secret which we've not created yet. So like I said, secrets are these are they are things you want to hide from your code. And how do we hide them? We hide them with our in our .env file. So in .env, in our .env is going to have a key called secrets. So secrets. So this is going to be, so we can give this whatever secret we want. For now, this is a really simple app. So you can just call it secrets. You can decide to make your secrets code more, more secure. So secret is okay. Save the file. I want to bring it in here. So let's bring in this first. Require.env.config. Let's close this. Close this. Let's close this. Don't need this for now. Okay, so bring in our secrets. Let's bring this in here. So config, and then we can break out our secrets from process.env. Okay. So we're going to put that here. We'll say secrets. Right? It's a string. That's fine. The next thing to do is to assign user to request object. So how do we do that? We say request.user equals decoded user. So decoded.user, and then we say next. So that's all for the try parts. For the error part, we can just say rest.status. If there's an error, return a status of 401, and then a JSON message going to be status code 401 and message say token is not valid. Alright, so I'll save this and go back to our user controller. So we're trying to check for the password here. So we can see to check for the password, we're going to need bcrypts here. So we're going to say if there's a match, or if there's no match, so we're going to need to bring in or define a variable called isMatch, which is equal to awaiting bcrypts dot, we're going to compare the password from the request. We're comparing it to the user and password from our database. So we're going to say if there's no match, so that means if the password doesn't match, return res.status, so 400 bad request. We're going to say status code 400, and we'll say message invalid credentials. So we can break this down. But if there's a match, we can just there's a match, send token. So we're sending token. We're going to send payload and signed token. So we're going to say const payload equals user object, which is the ID, so user.id, and then we're going to sign it with JWT and send the payload and the secrets, which we've not brought in here. We should bring that in also. So we'll bring in this, then we'll bring in const secrets equals so we have secret now, and I'm going to put in an option expires in, say, 1 day. So 1 day is 336,000 seconds, I'm guessing. 1 day, day 2 seconds. Again, my internet is off. Well, it should be 36,000 seconds. So 1 day. So that's okay. Or 360,000 seconds. So this is okay. So four zeros. You can put in whatever you want there, but just know that whatever you put in here, once the time reaches, your token will no longer be valid anymore. So this is going to take a callback error and token. Let me check, confirm. So 1 day, seconds. So that's what it means. So 4 days. So that was 4 days. This is okay. Token. So we're going to return. I'm going to say if error. If there's an error, show the error. Else, return a JSON object of message. Say status code 200 is going to be 200 status code. You can say message logged in successfully. And then user, you just want to return the user objects, but I don't want to return everything in the user objects. So what I would rather do is return some things here when the user logs in. So this is going to display. So I just need the first name. First name is going to be user dot first name. Last name is going to be user dot last name. Email is going to be user dot email. User role, so I need to know what role this user is assigned to. A particular user that is logged in needs to know what role he is assigned to. So user dot user role is tutor. User dot is tutor is admin. That's it for the user object that I want to send. And last, I want to send the token. So the token is going to come from here. Yeah, so let's trace the error. In case of an error, we want to console.error, want to send an error message. Error.message. and then return a status of 500, which is server error. So that will be all for the login user. Another routes that would like to create, we would like to get users. So wherever user is logged in, we would like to get that particular user. So we can say router dot get is going to be a get route. So you can say API slash auth. So this is just going to be a get, it's not logging in, it's just going to get. So you can just say slash auth, and we're going to bring in our auths. And the users controller dot, I'm going to say get logged in user, which we're going to create next. So explaining this particular auth here is from this auth which we exported. Did we? Yeah, we exported it, and we're going to bring it in here. So we're going to say const auth equals require from middleware slash auth. So what does that mean? It means that for anyone to access this particular route or this particular URL, the person has to be authenticated. So you are going to have to pass in the token in the header to tell the application that you are authenticated. That's what that means. So this is a private route. So let's create that real quick. In our user controller, we'll have we're going to say exports dot get logged in user async function response, and then our description, just a little comment above. You can so for this route is going to be routes, and then we're just going to that's going to be the routes. So for this particular route, it's going to be pretty simple. We're just going to use a try catch, and then we're getting the user from the DB. So const user equals find by ID. The ID is going to be the request.user.id, and then we're going to select we don't want the password, so we are removing the password from this query. Then by returning the user. Res.json, just send the status code 200, message of user gotten successfully, and then we'll just send our user objects. So user, we can do that, or we can just leave it like this. So that'll be fine. Then we want to catch the error if there's any error. So should there be any error, just console.error. So console, send the error to the console, error.message, and res.status of 500. So server error. So we're sending server error message to the user. Alright, so the video is already getting a bit long, which will be a little bit hard to upload. So I'll just stop here, and in the next lesson we'll be creating other routes also. So see you in the next class.